Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is a video from Tom and Ram Giberson's beautiful garden down in Athens, Georgia. This is just some video footage I took walking around. Actually, this is drone footage right here, but most of this is just me walking around with a stabilizer. Just going to talk through some of the waterfalls and some of the various paths around the garden. I've done this similar video with it silent or with music over it in the past and didn't really talk through a lot of the plants, and I'm not going to name every plant in this video, but we'll name a few as we go around. The beginning here is Ram filming me, filming her beautiful garden. This is the bottom. When you come out the back door and go down the steps from their back patio, you come down to this area, and this is the lower pool for this fountain. And there's a waterfall in the lower pools as well, not just the higher pools. So when she's constructing one of these things, normally you put a waterfall in and then it runs down a little river and it goes back up. But you see there's actual waterfall even in the lower bowls on these things. So there's sound at the top and sound at the bottom. So it appears to just be like natural, natural springs coming out of the side of those rock walls. That's some acris or sweet flag, that variegated looking grass-like plant that you see there. She uses a lot of it. There's a Harry Lauder's walking stick. There was one of those in a video that I did from here the other day as well about some drainage. She'll use a lot of things over and over throughout this garden. She will grab something and pop it in a hole. If it looks like it needs to be filled, she'll use something she already has. That tree is a crepe myrtle. It's likely Natchez crepe myrtle. I think it is a white one, and that red bark that you get on Natchez. But you see how high the tree had been limbed up to make sure you're still getting light down into this garden. It's an important component of the garden. She's also got some bird feeders that you can see back there. But all these large boulders are amazing. There's a lot of little dwarf conifers you'll see in here. Little dwarf cryptomeria, little dwarf junipers. So there's always something, even in the winter, if things are dying down, there's still going to be color here. Japanese maple in a container. There's several Japanese maples. So you've got this sidewalk that goes along the edge of this stream connecting these two pools, basically. And so this is what I'm walking up. But you get these giant boulders in this garden that look like they were always there. It looks like the garden's been worked around these boulders. That's really getting boulders that are big enough to make a statement in the garden. I think Tom had told me they got, I don't remember how many tons of boulders he said they originally got, and the land just ate them. So they had to, really put a lot of rock into this garden to make it look like it had always been there. I'm panning up here, back down to the bottom pool and then up. Those are Italian cypress. There, it kind of divides this part of the garden from another part that we'll walk down in just a minute. You see how densely this is planted. I talk about this frequently. She's got water plants. Got water plants in the water, and then lower growing ground cover things, and shrubs, and then slightly bigger shrubs, and then limbed up shrubs in the distances. That little juniper right there is probably Procumbens nana juniper, and you see all that acris, how the sun hits it, all that yellow foliage on that grass. It's just beautiful. And again, she's got these boulders stuck in here and there with moss growing on them like they've been there for 1,000 years. Everything just blends in so well. You see, again, back in the distance there where you get limbed up shrubs. That's some sort of Chamaecyparis or false cypress that's been limbed up. There's another view of that side of that red bark on that crepe myrtle, which just really, really stands out. And of course, it being limbed up so much, the red stands out even more. Again, ground cover is coming out, buffering the edge of this sidewalk so you don't just see straight lines. I think that's a ground cover gardenia, and then that yellow right there is a ground cover euonymus, fortunae of some sort. A lot of different ones of those available. And then she's got that boulder sitting down in the water. You can stand on that. And it's got moss growing on it, and the boulder's just firmly attached to the ground. So you can stand on that and observe the whole thing. These are daylilies and irises and various things leading up to the actual waterfall. And then the waterfall's got like 4 or 5 tiers, going up, so it's making a lot of noise. Really quite a bit of noise. There's nowhere you can go in this garden, and this garden's several acres, that you can't hear the water noise going. And then of course the steps made out of various materials, going up and out of here. It's just, we're gonna do a spin around the garden, and we're actually gonna come back through that area to here. There's an ironwood, or Persian ironwood is what that tree is. Perodia persica. Then you're coming back around. That's a limbed up cryptomeria, or Japanese cedar. Again, so when it's limbed up like that, we get a long range view. We can actually see her greenhouse back in the back. We're going to walk past a bit of that next to her chicken coop in a minute. But you get long range views through the garden, but you don't get to see everything. You still got to walk around to see it all. But that's what that is right there. Very, cryptomeria that's been limbed up and turned into kind of a bonsai tree. Really quite beautiful. There's vertical iris growing out of that acarus over there, or that sweet flag. It's beautiful. And then we spin back around here. I think you can see Steph and Ram sitting on the steps over there. And then there's this boulder that I wanted to show before I moved on here. This boulder looks like it's always been there, and the wall was worked around it. There's clever things like that all over the place in this garden. It looks like, I didn't want to move this boulder, so I built this wall around it. No, she put the boulder there too. And it just, she turned it into art. So here, down below that bottom pool where we started, on the other side of those Italian cypress, this sidewalk here is pretty wide. One thing, there's a few set of steps in this garden, and I'm going to show you one in a minute, but most of her interconnected paths are just ramps, so that the garden can still be maintained. If she put steps everywhere where the terrain changed, you wouldn't be able to very easily get down here and mulch. But this is the second waterfall. This is drone footage of that, and we're just going to walk through it just like we did the other one. Really beautiful. Those koi are gigantic that are in this garden. You see all the moss on these rocks and the various waterfalls. So this is the top pool, and I think I go up here with the camera and show, here's a limbed up, like I think that's a Nellie Stevens holly that's been limbed up, and so you still have this long range view where you can see some other things in the background, and the things lower growing are still getting light with those things limbed up. So there's a set of steps to the right we're going to take a better look at in a few minutes. But ground covers, the Japanese maple that you see here on the left, and I think you can see up in there, I don't know how big your television you're watching on, but you can see waterfall all the way to the top of that bank. We'll see it a little better in just a second. So there's one of the pools. Here's the second pool, and this pool's built into this patio. So it makes it look like it's, this curve, here it is right here. This little curve is cut out of the patio. It makes it look like it's just a natural formation. And then there's this large boulder. And then one I've shown before in another tour video coming up right here. This boulder that's sticking up out of this patio just looks like, it makes it look like it had to have been there, right? Why else would you have worked the patio around it? But it's just part of Ram's vision of how she sees, natural things. That's how the world would look, right? So she can actually recreate that somehow in her artistic mind that she has. And you see the various waterfalls coming down under this contorted Japanese maple. Again, the moss on the rocks. Any place she can, she's sticking an iris or some sort of grass or a fern or a juniper, between rocks to make it look like that's the way it would be in nature. Everything would be opportunistic. If there's a crack in something, something's going to grow out of it. You see that again as we go down this little, where the water trails down out of those top two ponds. And you see, again, you got the waterfall on both ends of it. Most folks, again, would put this waterfall on the one end and that would be that, but not her. She's got a mind for this. It's just different than me and most people, and she can just see it differently, the way it would look, naturally. And there's again, these koi are just absolutely gigantic. This pool's very deep, so animals can't get them. She had an issue early on, but there's a very deep spot in each of these pools where the fish can retreat if there's any kind of danger to them. But just a beautiful space. There are lots of different size rocks blended in together. Some of them are smooth, like they've been in the water. Some of them are jagged, like they've just, busted out of the ground. Super, super interesting. Of course, I got a helicopter flying over my head as I'm recording this right now, but there's more of that sweet flag, the yellow. Here's the view back up to the other two pools, and there's a pretty good elevation change here. So that water from the top two pools is falling down several feet. And here's another waterfall down at the bottom corner of the property. This would be the side of the property that people would just not do anything with because it's so far away from everything. And in this garden, you take 3 extra turns to go out of your way, and you find this. Just really amazing. I showed the other side of this in a drainage video. She's draining a lot of water through this property and collecting it, trying to get it down in the ground. But this is beautiful. Lots of different materials for these paths. Here you're just seeing a natural stone with some ground covers growing in between them, moss growing in between them. And then, again, always lots of ground covers. No, there's very little mulching that needs to be done here because most of it's covered in ground covers or shrubs or larger shrubs or trees or whatever. But it's like a 3-tiered waterfall in this spot. Again, very, very, very large boulders. This is like a ton or more boulder, sitting there next to this thing, and it just adds to it. It makes it look, more natural, like it's been there before. This thing just makes tons of noise down at the bottom of the property. I love that one rock on the other side, or boulder with the moss on it. It's one of the prettier ones. This is just that set of steps before I showed you the second fountain. This is just boulders arranged in a certain way, and then there's Japanese painted ferns, other ground covers, shrubs, all kinds of things here, making the scene up. And it's just, it's 3 steps, but man, is it beautiful. So we're going up a ramp on the other side of the property where I pointed out where that greenhouse was from the first fountain, and she keeps in the wintertime all of her tropical or containers in that greenhouse. Here's some more of that sweet flag. Again, there's a lot of repeats in this garden. She's reusing things. If she finds a hole somewhere, she's not running to the store and buying it. She's got so many things in this garden, she can just go divide something and add it in. This chicken coop is about as nice a chicken coop as you're ever going to. These chickens live in style, for sure. It's a beautiful place, and she composts all of this material. I'll show you in just a minute. But there's kale and other things from the winter. I think a lot of that stuff's given to the chickens. And then coming between the greenhouse and the chicken coop, you see various boxwoods. And then that shrub on the left, I think I'm going to slow down at right there. That's a clayera. That can be shaped however you'd want to shape it, or Japanese clayera. I've got several of those in the garden. That one looks like liane, which I have liane in this garden. Again, various boxwoods. And these are just, paths connecting a couple buildings back here. She's growing some edible things for the chickens and for them as well. Japanese maples just everywhere. She's got so many seedling Japanese maples that have come up in this garden. She pots a lot of them, gives a lot of them away. Heck, I've carried a couple of them out of there. Another boxwood. We're going to go around this other house, and here's a cat that's patrolling for some voles probably, or something out here in the garden. And this is an area that's just, again, this is way away from the house. It's not close to what I've really shown off in this garden before, but it's still incredibly detailed. A couple of azaleas that just about bloomed out while we were there a couple weeks ago, but still holding on to a little bit of color. And then coming around this way, there is the white flowering shrub back there is an eastern snowball viburnum, or Viburnum opulus. There are 3 different snowball viburnums. I think I'm gonna, yeah, I look at it. There are 3 different snowball viburnums. This is Viburnum opulus, or the eastern snowball. It tends to be the smallest growing one. The flower clusters are a little smaller too than like the Chinese snowball or the Japanese snowball, but still pretty plant. Blooming well. There's lots of roses in here. We've passed lots of roses that I've hardly mentioned. There's some more of that sweet flag and some dwarf mondo grass, and then the ducks. Here are the ducks. The ducks have it just as made as the chickens do. They have their own water fountain, their own water feature, and lots of noise from this water as well that the ducks get to enjoy. This little pathway here is through a star jasmine. And again, you're always seeing the changes in the materials being used for the sidewalks. It changes throughout. Some of it's mortared natural stone, and then there's just all kinds of materials used for it. This looks like more of a concrete, something you would have bought at 12 by 18 stones or something. That's that giant boulder, and I had to turn around and show that off. That got put, 100, 200 yards from the house probably, and that was put there just to fool the eye through this whole garden. That these boulders existed on this property beforehand. That's Edgeworthia. That's limbing itself up between 2 plants there. That would have bloomed back in February or March. Some of these things I don't remember why I was slowing down with the camera until I get up a little closer on them. Lots of little pathways through here. So this is kind of her working area. It's it's still quite beautiful, amazing stuff. A lot of edible plants over here. Here's her. She has several compost piles here. So this is the waste from the chickens, and it gets mixed with other things in the garden. Just beautiful. Lots of edible plants over here. That's fennel that we just saw there. Let's kind of slow down and take a look at the trunk here. Just beautiful tree that's been there for a while. Continuing around, I think we're on bricks now. The path is just kind of ever changing, as always. Beautiful selection of shrubs, trees, flowering things. Again, a lot of repeats. I mean, you're going to see a lot, this is some variegated Solomon seal in a section, and some of these things, are spreading plants as well. So they got to have a little bit of control added to them occasionally, but they're fighting with each other. Another trellis we're going to walk under. It has a rose on it, and I think it has an akebia on it too, or a chocolate vine. I think the 2 of them are blended in together on the top of it, just leafing out at this point for the season. Round in the corner, there's a big fatsia right there, and then another another gate. Basically, they've got 2 driveways. One main one they use, and this one's more of a working driveway that goes back to the chicken coops, and a mulch can be delivered here, or whatever's going on. I cross over this, and we're going to head back to where that first fountain was. But again, just pay attention to all the details. And this sidewalk, I think I go down and look at this sidewalk. I want you to see how many different things: pavers, natural stones, bricks. She's got these little 4-sided, not squares, right there that she's used as looking like keystones in between. Just various materials constantly changing, and then the ground covers are buffering the edge of it, so you can't even see the edge of it. But the path is still there, and it softens, all these things soften the edge of it. But again, it just constantly changes materials. It's all so clever. I can't ever get enough of this place. There's so many details. You can stand in one place for a long time and just see more and more and more details, more thought that was put into it. And we're heading back. This is the back of that ironwood Perodia that we saw earlier in the video, and I haven't never shown the front garden. front garden, if we took that right-hand path, we'd go to the front garden. The front garden's also amazing. And again, I've never shown it because the back garden just has so much to offer. And we're coming back around to the back of that first waterfall that we looked at, and that's Ram and Steph sitting on the porch over there. And I asked them to wave, and then that's me filming Ram with my drone.